one of the things that I learned when I worked for the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations as a lawyer, a young lawyer, was the importance of taking action against corruption. And one of my jobs as a lawyer was to investigate a scheme in which organized crime figures were using the two sons of the president of a national union to sell bogus insurance to the membership called severance insurance. And the insurance policies, instead of buying a group policy, they bought individual policies, which dramatically increased the costs. And one of the things we developed in the investigation is the organized crime figures would literally take the checks from the unions and go in and cash them and get currency and put them in paper bags and leave with paper bags full of currency. So one of my jobs was to try to find out where these records were. And I was dispatched by the committee to go to Detroit. And because we had a lead that they were at an office of a consultant that was working for the organized crime and for the others as a consultant. So we found our way to that office, and I got there early. And I had with me a young man that was from the GAO. He was just an auditor type. He wasn't what we would call an investigator. So we got to the office and we went in, and I quickly developed a relationship with the secretary, and she was kind enough to let me know that yes, they in fact did have those records. And so we were with the secretary before the big boss arrived, and the big boss came into the room, and I said, well, listen, we're here to pick up those records. We'd like to take them back with us to Washington. And he goes, oh, we don't have the records. And I said, no, I think you do, because your secretary already told me that you did. And he looked at me and he said, in the most threatening of ways, don't you ever, ever talk to anyone in this office without my permission. And I said, well, look, we'd like to see if we could take those records back with us to Washington right now, so would you make those available to us if you would? And he said, well, look, I'm going to have to talk to my lawyers. Why don't you come back in a few hours, and I'll let you know. So we immediately went to a payphone, and I called back to Washington, D.C., and I had my boss, I told my boss what I needed, and I said, look, I need a subpoena signed by the senator, Senator Nunn. I need it put on an airplane. I need it flown to Detroit, and I need it to happen right this second. And that's exactly what Laverne Duffy, who was a very close friend of Robert Kennedy, did. He rushed over. He got the senator to sign the subpoena. They put it on an airplane, and they rushed it out to Detroit's airport. I, in turn, jumped in our car, and Detroit at that time had a circular freeway, but it was just filled with construction. It just was like the most horrendous nightmare of construction, and we sped to the airport as fast as we could. And we got there, and in a couple of hours, the plane arrived from Washington, D.C., and we were right there waiting for it, and we grabbed that envelope with the subpoena, and we ran for the car, and we drove back at 90 miles an hour, and we got back at the appointed time, which was about 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, maybe even 4 o'clock. So we sat down and we were at the conference table, and the fellow comes back and says, well, I talked to my lawyer and we're not going to turn over those records. And I said, well, I really think you should turn them over. And he said, no, we're not going to do it. We don't have to do it. And I said, well, actually you do. And I then took out the subpoena and served him with what's called a forthwith subpoena, saying that those records were to go to me, and I was going to take them back to the Senate, and that happened to happen forthwith, not tomorrow, but right now. And he looked at that thing, and he just turned beet red, and he stormed out of the room. And then he came back about 15 minutes later, and he sat down, and he said, I talked to my lawyer, and he said, I don't have to turn over these records. And I looked right him in the face, and I said, you know, when you're held in contempt, it won't be your lawyer that goes to jail. It'll be you. Because there's no reason for you not to turn over those records. So it's my lawyer wants to talk to you. You know, and so I got this lawyer on the phone, and he went back and forth, and I said, listen, these records are within the jurisdiction of the Senate. We have a proper investigation. We have a narrowly defined subpoena. Those records have to go back with me. And we are going to seek contempt if they don't, because we know what's going to happen if they don't go back with me. I come back in and we wait 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and he comes back and he takes all the records in a box and he says, here they are. He turns them over to us. We jump in that car with those boxes and we speed back to the airport. And we were thinking to ourselves, my God, we're going to get assassinated on the way back. And here's this poor GAO guy that's just an auditor that came out with me to look at records. And we're going back and his eyes were so big and he was like, nervous like this. And we sped back and we raced to catch the next flight to DC. And they had made arrangements for us. And we jumped on that airplane and we had our box of records. And he looked at me and he said, this was the most exciting day of my entire life. And so that's the story of Detroit.